Hi, Aria. Hope you're well. It's been a long time coming this conversation because of the things that you've achieved since being a League1 Ontario MDOC, particularly this season, and I'll let you kind of explain a little bit more about what you've been up to. For those who are uneducated, what have you been up to since kind of your MDOC role that you did for 5 seasons from up to 2022?
Yeah, so I left Canada in September 2022 after that, close to the end of that League1 season. And I did a master's in Middlesex University in the UK in sport performance analysis. And I did a season internship at Leyton Orient Academy. And this season I was at FC Midtjylland in Denmark with the first team. And, it was a season of ups and downs, but it ended in the best possible way. With us winning the Danish league in the final day, on the final match day. So really fulfilling season, and it's been a lot of unique and interesting experiences since I left Ontario.
Fantastic. A nice concise summary, really, but also packed in there quite a lot of things that we'll no doubt unpick over the next few over the next 10-15 minutes or so. So before we're going to get on to what you did after MDOC and your experience working with League1 Ontario on game days, what are the types of things that you remember that perhaps stand out from your time from those 5 seasons?
Yeah, well, I think the best place to start is really the beginning, because when I first started getting involved in different roles in football, I did a few different jobs. So I did some coaching on a volunteer basis. I did a little bit of refereeing. So I tried out different things in the game. And I think the main reason I wanted to do this is because growing up in Canada, I was in a neighborhood where there weren't many soccer fans or football fans around. So I was watching, my dad introduced me to the game, and I was watching, big Premier League matches, Champions League matches, historic things happening in the world of the sport. And I look around, and it's just a normal day to everybody else. So I think when I first applied for the role with League1, the amazing thing about it was, as soon as you walk in and you meet people like Dino Rossi and Anthony Totera, they're guys that have a big passion for the sport. And then I found, this is a community that I can be a part of. Other people that care about the game, they watch the big European games, but also it's quite community driven. And, they're also supporting the growth of the game in Canada. So it kind of really started there. And around the same time, this was back in 2017, I started coaching with my local club in Aurora. And I think kind of the situation was distinctly Canadian one, because growing up, I would always say to my parents, out of all the countries you guys could have moved to, you chose one of the few where, soccer is not the top sport, football is not the top sport. And, I was always like, it was a bit tongue in cheek, but I was saying, you could have picked any other country where, the sport would have meant something to everyday people, and it would have been, a big part of everyone's life. But the flip side of that is, for someone like me who didn't play high level and doesn't have, a wealth of experience in the professional game, it gave me opportunity to work with really good players really early. So just within a couple years of me starting out coaching, I was working with some of the best players in Ontario. And also, I guess I was lucky to have some really good mentors, coaches with more experience than me. So it gave me that opportunity, which I think in other countries you wouldn't have, because there'd be a long queue of people wanting to work in the sport. And if you're not, if you don't have a history in the game, it might be difficult for you to get your, foot in the door. So that's where it started. And yeah, I mean, I did it for 5 seasons. So I enjoyed my time there and being a part of League1.
Awesome. And what kept you coming back season after season?
Yeah, I think it's well, what, like I mentioned, the community aspect of it, but also the games. You get some incredible, thrilling games, and every match has its own story. And as part of the role, obviously part of it is a standards compliant piece where you're making sure the game day operations run smoothly. But the flip side of it is telling the story of the match. So just giving a platform for the players that are in the league, and hoping to go to higher levels. I think the story of the game is what really kept me coming back. And I remember one season, what they try to do is assign you to games nearby. So being based out of like Aurora, it's quite easy to go down to Toronto and games are in that region. But one time they really Melissa was assigning a game and they needed someone in London, Ontario, which is a couple hours away. And I think I was maybe the only one available for that day. So she was really begging me to take the game. And I remember in the end, I accepted it. I did coach the game in the morning with Aurora and then did the 2-hour drive to London. And, obviously, like when it's a drive that long, you're thinking, okay, well, is it going to be worthwhile? And I remember it was like one of the most thrilling games I've seen. It was a women's semifinal match, FC London against Vaughan. And I think it ended in like 4-3. So the drive was definitely worth it. And it was just, a good memory I have of my time at League One.
And you mentioned there as well, there's lots of players that play in League1 Ontario and then step up onto higher levels. Are they some memories that you keep as well? Perhaps players that you brush shoulders with as an MDOC that or watched on the pitch and you thought, oh yeah, look where they are now.
Yeah, it's really spectacular because I started before the Canadian Premier League had started, and I kind of saw the league develop as the Canadian Premier League launched, and a lot of the players move up into that level. But yeah, of course, you see, I remember working games where Alistair Johnson is on the team sheet for Vaughan, and he's playing for the national team now, and equally like players like Ryan Raposo playing in League One matches, and now they're doing their thing in MLS. So. But yeah, it's really amazing to see, and it just shows like there's talent everywhere and there's potential everywhere. It's just them being given the right platform and sometimes just being given the right opportunity.
And it's not just players as well. You're testament to that yourself in your own career. Talk us through that transition from Canada to England, going to one of the most storied football clubs, Leyton Orient in London. And then coming in as an intern, doing your studies on side. Talk us through, that process and what that was like.
Yeah, I mean, as part of the master's program, you are required to do a placement at a club. And the difficult part with that is that you need to find your own placement. So I was applying to different clubs, and I always knew it was going to be difficult coming in from outside and, not having any connections in the city or in the country. I mean, there's maybe one person I knew from university who had moved out to London, but they weren't involved in football at all. So I did an interview with Leyton Orient, with their lead analyst in the academy, and just kind of did a presentation on one of just a player analysis, basically. And I remember I thought it was an okay analysis, but I feel that what really got me that opportunity was that when I spoke about the game, he could really feel that I had a passion for it. And, I think it also raises an eyebrow when you're someone coming from such a long way just to pursue something in football. I think that also stands out to people. And I remember at the time, actually, I took the call while I was on holiday in Portugal, and I'd taken a hotel right outside the Porto Stadium. And I told the lead analyst there, "Oh, I'm actually just outside Porto Stadium. I can show you if you want." And he's like, "Yeah, go on then." So I showed him the stadium through the webcam of the computer, and and I spoke to him once I arrived and once I was into the role, and he said, "Yeah, at that point I knew you were kind of obsessed with football." So that's at that point I knew you were going to be committed to the club and to the role.
Brilliant. And you'd obviously taken quite a lot of learnings from that experience and then transitioning again to another country and to another opportunity. You started up with the club, perhaps not having the best season ever, quite a lowly position in the standings, and then completely turned it around this year. So talk us through what the types of things that you took into that role from your time in Leyton Orient, and perhaps the changes that you made and the club made to become a winning team again.
Yeah, I think, well, one thing I will mention, like as I moved from Canada to England to Denmark, what I notice is like at the end of the day, we're at a stage now where a lot of people understand what a good training session looks like and what we need to do to be successful in football. But the difference is the resources. Like in Canada, if you're coaching, a lot of times you have a head coach, maybe an assistant coach, and if you're lucky, a goalkeeper coach at a session. And at Leighton Orient, you see already more support staff in terms of you have 2 analysts, a sports scientist, a physio, and a strength conditioning coach. And, you already have more staff, more resources available to the players. And then at Midtjylland in Denmark, at first team level, you see that even multiplied. So you have even more support staff that are there to help the players. So one thing I realize is, in Canada, maybe things are not as developed as Europe, but it's not because of so much ideas. It's maybe down to the resources. And I think as we invest more in the game, then we can have that same level and elevate our game as well, because you just notice it going through from Canada to Leighton and to Midtjylland, what the difference is. And at the end of the day, I've seen very good coaches and very good sessions in Canada. It's just really, the support and the resources around it, which we kind of lack in our grassroots. So, but I think, I kind of rambled with that one. But what was the other question? The transition from Midtjylland the season. So I think we came in at like the busiest period of the season because the club is competing in Conference League qualifying. So in August we had double game weeks the whole month through, and I'm still new to the role, so it was really a really fast, like a lot of days with no no days off and long hours, and you're learning everything on the fly. I think in the end that forces you to learn quickly, and I think in the long run this kind of benefit me and also everyone else that was working in the club. We didn't qualify for Europe that season, and I think then we were able to focus on the domestic campaign, the Superliga. And one thing I will say about the staff in Denmark is they're very committed to the process, and they never get too high when they win or too low when they lose. So they're very level-headed, very steady. And I think this really helped them. They're committed to their process from the start of the season to the end. Even times where me is coming in with a little bit less experience. If we went a few games without a win, it would really take a toll on me. But I noticed the guys around me were just getting on with the work, and they didn't let it affect them too much. So that was a bit eye-opening to me, because football is an emotional game, and you do get invested in it, and you want to do everything possible to win. So I think that was a big reason why they were able to have success at the end of the season. They were committed to the process, they were steady, and really just believed in their principles. And with a little bit of luck, we won the league on the last day, which was crazy.
And now, obviously, winning the league has its own rewards, not just to be crowned champion of the country, but Champions League qualification spot as well. How does that feel to go from League1 Ontario in 2022 to Champions League in 2024?
Yeah, no, I'm really, really excited. I think we're just patiently waiting to see what the qualifying round, what draw it brings. But I think for the club, it's like their ultimate goal is to showcase themselves in the Champions League, and for the young players that are in that squad to also showcase themselves on the biggest stage. And it's a bit surreal because it's the competition. I grew up watching it, and a lot of times, because in Ontario it's a 3 p.m. kickoff or 2:45. I'd come home from school, I'm watching it by myself because my dad's not home from work yet, and my other friends didn't really take an interest. So it's pretty amazing to be able to watch it in person and be involved with it.
Brilliant. And what are the types of things that you've taken away from your MDOC role? Or perhaps you mentioned there, the experience of actually being in Canada and being around the training sessions, but perhaps is there anything from your MDOC experience specifically that you look back on and go, okay, yeah, this has helped me. This helps me in my role now, or if not, it's helped me get to where I am now. What are those? Are there anything to do with that?
Yeah, well, I think when I first started out as an MDOC, we were writing the match reports, and that was kind of my first formal introduction to writing about a match and analyzing a match in that way, in terms of saying what happened, but telling the story of the game and kind of describing what's happening in a way that's interesting to read, and also tells it in enough detail. So I think over time, the more you do that, the more you think about the game, and the better you get at describing the game and really analyzing what's happening, and even up to a point seeing what's coming and kind of predicting what could happen depending on how a game is going. And of course, speaking with the coaches in League One and being close up, seeing the action, it just gives you that level of hands-on exposure and experience that you don't get just watching on TV. And I think the biggest piece is just the commitment of the people that are involved in making that league happen. I think similar to kind of non-league in England, where it's really volunteer driven and driven by people that do it solely because they love the sport and they want their communities to excel. I think just their commitment to the game kind of inspires you to do it, because it shows that there's people that care. It's not just me, and it's not just a few people involved in the game. There's people that care about elevating the sport and making the games happen. And I think one thing I always did is try to, if I'm doing something, I want to give everything into it, even if it is just like a rep soccer game that I'm coaching. I want to put that extra detail in to help the players, because if they one day do reach a higher level, then they'll be prepared and they'll have the right mentality, the right attitude to approach those games. And yeah, I can speak a little bit about even in Aurora when I was doing an assistant coach role. That was kind of my introduction to using video to help players. And like I mentioned before, a lot of it is just down to, it's not the will to do it is always there. It's just the resources. I remember I did an analysis session with our team in the final season, where we didn't have a room with like a projector or a screen to show the video. It was an away day in Ottawa, and we ended up using a parent's van, lifting the hood on it. I go in with the laptop, and the players gather around the outside of the car so that they can, hide the glare of the screen and watch the video that way. I mean, it wasn't the ideal way to do it, but it was enough. We got the message across, and that's some of the things we had to do. But that's when I talk about resources. This is what I mean. Like the players have a passion for it, and they want to do it. It's just sometimes you have to be creative in how you set it up and how you do it that way.
Do you look back at League1 Ontario now as a fan and perhaps see the types of promotion and relegation and the app that's come out, and the way kind of even the MDOC role has changed this season in how we're reporting on games? So do you look back and how do you look back, having had 2 years away and different experiences in the game? What are those things that you look at now?
No, it's really exciting. I still have a lot of friends that are involved in League One, and even players I used to coach at U13, U14 that are stepping into the league and making a name for themselves there. So I'm really excited to see how they progressed, and just the growth of the sport in the country is still fascinating. I think we have even higher levels to go that we'll achieve in the build up to the World Cup. But yeah, of course, I always support grassroots, and even being back here for a couple of weeks on holiday, I'll try to go out to a few games in Canadian Premier League and League One, and even some grassroots games in my old club, just to see, just to keep contact and see how they're going.